3 years ago, I was sitting in my Honda Civic in the parking lot of a grocery store in Austin, Texas, crying over a $17 overdraft fee. I had 63 cents in my checking account, a maxed-out credit card, and a stack of rejection letters that could have been used as wallpaper. That night, something shifted in me so dramatically that by the time you finish listening to this story, you might never look at your own life the same way again. Because what happened next wasn't just luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was the universe responding to a frequency I didn't even know I was capable of broadcasting. And if I can do it, if someone who once couldn't afford groceries can completely rewrite their reality in 18 months, then so can you. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how I went from rock bottom to manifesting a life I didn't even dare dream of. But more importantly, it's about the moment I discovered that we're not victims of our circumstances. We're the architects of our reality. Let me paint you a picture of where I was 3 years ago. I was 28, living in a studio apartment in East Austin that smelled like cigarettes from the previous tenant. The walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor's Netflix shows word for word. I'd wake up every morning at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of construction next door, feeling like I was drowning in quicksand. I was working as a freelance graphic designer, which sounds creative and free, but the reality was I was scrambling for projects that paid barely enough to keep the lights on. I'd spend hours crafting proposals for clients who would ghost me, or worse, hire me, and then ask for endless revisions without paying extra. My self-worth was tied to every email notification, every potential client call. The morning of my breakdown, that day I mentioned in the parking lot, I'd just finished a phone call with a client who decided they didn't want to pay me for 3 weeks of work because they weren't feeling the vibe. 3 weeks. $700 I desperately needed. Gone. I remember sitting there in my car, hands shaking as I tried to calculate if I had enough gas to get home. The Texas heat was suffocating even with the AC running, and I felt this crushing weight on my chest like I couldn't breathe. I was angry. Furious, actually. Angry at the client. Angry at myself. Angry at life for being so damn hard all the time. But underneath that anger was something worse. A deep, bone-deep feeling that this was just how life was going to be for me. That I was one of those people who things just didn't work out for. I looked around at other cars in the parking lot and wondered what was wrong with me that I couldn't seem to figure out what everyone else had figured out. That night, I called my mom. I hadn't told her how bad things had gotten because, well, what's the point in worrying her? But something about that day broke me open. I told her everything. The debt, the clients, the fear, the shame of being almost 30 and feeling like a complete failure. She listened, and then she said something that would change everything. "Sarah, honey, you've been fighting so hard against life. What if you tried working with it instead?" I didn't know what she meant then, but that question planted a seed. 2 weeks later, I was in Barnes & Noble, one of my free entertainment options, browsing the self-help section with that particular mixture of hope and skepticism that comes when you're desperate enough to try anything. My eyes landed on this book with a simple title, The Secret, by Rhonda Byrne. Now, I want to be honest with you. My first thought was that it looked like New Age nonsense. The cover was all shiny and mystical looking. But I was broken enough to be open, and something about the way the book felt in my hands made me curious. I found a corner chair and started reading. The first story I read was about a woman who visualized a check in the mail for exactly the amount she needed, and 3 days later, it showed up. My logical mind immediately started making excuses. Coincidence, confirmation bias, whatever. But there was this tiny voice inside me that whispered, "What if?" I spent 3 hours in that chair, reading story after story of people who had transformed their lives not through force or struggle, but through aligning their thoughts and feelings with what they wanted to create. The law of attraction, they called it. The idea that our thoughts and emotions are like magnets, drawing experiences to us that match our inner state. The book talked about something called the frequency of gratitude, and how it was one of the highest vibrations we could broadcast to the universe. It mentioned visualization, feeling the emotions of already having what you want, and acting as if your desires were already on their way to you. I bought the book with money I should have spent on groceries. That night, I sat on my air mattress, yes, air mattress, because I couldn't afford a real bed, and read the entire thing cover to cover. By 3 a.m., I was either completely crazy or onto something life-changing. Maybe both. The book explained that everything is energy, including our thoughts. That the universe responds to the vibration we're putting out, not the words we're saying. So if I was constantly thinking about what I didn't have, worrying about money, feeling like a victim, that's exactly what I was attracting more of. It was like someone had given me the manual to a life I'd been trying to operate without instructions. The next morning, I started what would become my daily practice. I didn't have much, but I had a notebook and a pen. I decided to write down 3 things I was grateful for every morning, no matter how small. Day 1. I'm grateful for coffee. I'm grateful that my car started. I'm grateful for the sunrise through my window. It felt forced at first, almost silly. But I kept going because what did I have to lose? Then I started visualizing. The book talked about creating a mental movie of your desired life and watching it every day with full emotional engagement. So every morning after my gratitude practice, I would close my eyes and imagine myself successful, financially free, living in a beautiful space, working with clients who valued my creativity. I'll be honest, those first few weeks it felt like playing pretend. I'd visualize my dream life, then open my eyes to my studio apartment with the stained carpet and feel the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be so acutely it hurt. But something was shifting. Subtle at first, like the barely perceptible change in light just before dawn. I started noticing things. A client would email me with a new project right when I was worrying about money. I'd find a parking spot right where I needed it. Small things, but they felt orchestrated somehow. 3 weeks into my practice, I got a call from a company I'd pitched months earlier. They wanted to hire me for a project that would pay more than I'd made in the previous 2 months combined. The woman on the phone said, "I don't know why, but I just kept thinking about your proposal. Something about it felt right." That's when I started to believe. As the weeks turned into months, I began to understand that the law of attraction wasn't just about positive thinking. It was about becoming energetically aligned with what I wanted to create. I learned about something called the feeling place of your desires. It wasn't enough to visualize success. I had to feel successful now, even before the external evidence showed up. I started acting as if I was already the person I wanted to become. I cleaned my little studio apartment like it was a luxury loft. I dressed well even when I was just working from home. I spoke to myself the way I would speak to someone I deeply loved and respected. I created what I called my future self meditation. Every morning, I would spend 20 minutes in visualization, but instead of just seeing what I wanted, I would step into the version of myself who already had it. I'd feel her confidence, her peace, her excitement about life. I'd notice how she walked, how she talked, how she made decisions. The meditation became so real that sometimes I'd open my eyes and be surprised to still be in my studio apartment. But here's what was remarkable. That feeling of being her would stay with me throughout the day. I'd catch myself making choices from that place of inner knowing rather than from fear or scarcity. I started studying everything I could get my hands on. I read Neville Goddard's work about the power of imagination and living in the end state of your wish fulfilled. I discovered Joseph Murphy's teachings about the subconscious mind and how it accepts whatever we consistently impress upon it. I learned from Abraham Hicks about the emotional guidance system and how our feelings are always telling us whether we're moving toward or away from what we want. But the most profound shift happened when I stopped trying to control how my desires would manifest and started focusing on becoming a vibrational match for them. I remember the exact moment this clicked for me. I was walking through downtown Austin on a particularly difficult day. I'd just lost a client and was spiraling into old patterns of worry and self-doubt. Suddenly, I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and asked myself, how would the version of me who's already successful handle this situation? The answer came immediately. She would see this as redirection towards something better. She would trust that the universe had her back. She would use this as an opportunity to level up rather than evidence that she was failing. In that moment, I chose to be her. Not someday when my circumstances changed, but right then and there. I want to be completely honest with you about this journey because it wasn't all manifestation magic and synchronicities. There were dark nights of the soul where I wondered if I was deluding myself. Moments when the old reality seemed so much more real than the new one I was trying to create. About 6 months into my practice, I hit what I now call the testing phase. It seemed like everything was falling apart. I lost 3 clients in 1 week. My laptop died. My car needed expensive repairs I couldn't afford. I remember sitting on my floor, surrounded by bills, thinking, if the law of attraction is real, why is my life getting worse? That night, I almost gave up. I was ready to throw in the towel and go back to believing that life was just hard and I had to accept whatever crumbs came my way. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of how different I'd felt during those months of practice. Maybe it was the undeniable synchronicities I'd experienced. Or maybe it was just stubbornness. Instead of quitting, I decided to go deeper. I realized that I'd been doing the practices, but a part of me was still holding on to old beliefs about myself and what was possible for me. I was like someone trying to plant a garden while simultaneously pulling up the seeds. I had to face some uncomfortable truths about myself. The story I'd been telling about being unlucky, about things being hard for me, about not being the kind of person good things happen to, these weren't just thoughts. They were deep-seated beliefs that were creating my reality. So I began what I call my belief archaeology. I started digging into the unconscious patterns that were sabotaging my conscious desires. I noticed how I would get excited about a new opportunity, and then immediately start thinking of all the ways it could go wrong. I saw how I would manifest something wonderful, and then feel unworthy of it, somehow managing to push it away. The work became less about attracting external things and more about healing the internal landscape that determined what I believed I deserved. This is when I discovered Louise Hay's work on self-love and how our relationship with ourselves creates the template for how life treats us. I started doing mirror work, looking into my own eyes and saying, I love you, Sarah. You are worthy of all good things. It felt ridiculous at first, but gradually, I began to mean it. The breakthrough came on an ordinary Tuesday morning in March. I was doing my usual morning practice, gratitude, visualization, and setting my intention for the day, when I had what I can only describe as a moment of complete knowing. I was visualizing my ideal work situation, creative projects that excited me, clients who valued my input, financial abundance that allowed me to live without constant money stress. But instead of it feeling like wishful thinking, it felt like remembering. Like I was tuning into a reality that already existed and I was just catching up to it. In that moment, I felt this incredible sense of peace and certainty, not because I could see how it would happen, but because I knew it was already done in the quantum field of infinite possibilities. I felt connected to something so much bigger than my small self and her problems. That afternoon, I got an email that would change everything. A marketing agency in Los Angeles had found my work online and wanted to hire me as their creative director for a rebranding campaign. The project would pay more than I'd made in the previous year, and they wanted to fly me out for a meeting. But here's the thing that still gives me chills. In the email, the agency owner mentioned that she'd been looking for someone for months, but when she saw my portfolio, she felt like she'd found exactly what she'd been manifesting. She used that exact word. The synchronicity was so perfect, it almost felt orchestrated by some benevolent cosmic force that had been waiting for me to get out of my own way. That trip to Los Angeles was like stepping into the life I'd been visualizing. The agency was everything I'd dreamed of. Creative, collaborative, values-driven. The people felt like my tribe. The work excited me in a way I'd forgotten was possible. But the most magical part wasn't the external opportunities. It was how different I felt. I walked into that meeting not as someone desperate for work, but as someone who knew her worth. I negotiated confidently. I shared my ideas without apologizing. I was the version of myself I'd been practicing being in my morning meditations. They offered me the position on the spot. Within 6 months, my entire life had transformed. I moved to LA into a beautiful apartment with huge windows and plants everywhere, exactly like the one I'd been visualizing. I was working on projects that lit me up, making more money than I'd ever thought possible, surrounded by people who appreciated my creativity. But the external changes were just the tip of the iceberg. The real transformation was internal. I felt like I'd come home to myself. The anxiety that had been my constant companion for years was replaced by this deep sense of trust in life. I walked through the world knowing that I was supported, that opportunities were always available, that I was worthy of good things. I started noticing synchronicities everywhere. I'd think of someone and they'd call. I'd need something and it would show up in the most unexpected ways. I'd set an intention and watch as the universe seemed to rearrange itself to make it happen. One evening, about a year after that first night in Barnes & Noble, I was sitting on my new balcony watching the sunset over the Hollywood Hills. I thought about that broken version of myself crying in the Honda Civic, and I felt such compassion for her. She had no idea that her breakdown was actually her breakthrough, that the moment she was willing to consider that there might be another way was the moment everything began to change. As my life transformed, I started sharing what I'd learned with friends and family. My sister was going through a difficult divorce and feeling hopeless about her future. I taught her the practices that had changed my life, the gratitude, the visualization, the belief work. Within 6 months, she'd met the love of her life and started a business she'd been dreaming about for years. My mom, who'd been struggling with health issues, began using affirmations and visualization. Her next doctor's visit showed improvement that surprised even her physicians. I realized that what I'd learned wasn't just personal transformation tools, they were universal principles that worked for anyone willing to apply them consistently and with genuine belief. The most profound realization was that we're all constantly creating our reality through our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. The only difference between people living the lives they want and people feeling stuck is awareness of this power and the willingness to use it consciously. I started a blog sharing my journey and the techniques that had worked for me. The response was overwhelming. People from all over the world were writing to tell me about their own manifestation successes: new jobs, healed relationships, unexpected money, health improvements, love connections. Each story confirmed what I'd learned. We're not powerless. We're not victims of circumstances. We're conscious creators with the ability to align ourselves with the life we truly want to live. Today, 3 years after that night in the parking lot, my life looks nothing like it did then. I run a successful creative agency with clients I love. I live in a beautiful home filled with art and plants and natural light. I travel to places I once only dreamed of visiting. I wake up excited about my day instead of dreading it. But the external changes, as wonderful as they are, aren't the real miracle. The real miracle is how I feel inside. I have this unshakable knowing that I'm supported by life, that opportunities are infinite, that whatever I need is always available to me. I still do my morning practice, gratitude, visualization, setting my intention for the day. Not because I have to, but because it connects me to that field of infinite possibility where all things exist in potential, waiting for us to align with them. I've learned that manifestation isn't about forcing the universe to give us what we want. It's about becoming the version of ourselves who naturally attracts what we desire. It's about healing the parts of us that feel unworthy and stepping into our power as conscious creators. When challenges come up now, and they do, because life is still life, I approach them differently. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" I ask, "What is this teaching me?" Or, "How is this redirecting me towards something better?" I trust that everything is working for my highest good, even when I can't see the bigger picture. I know some of you might be thinking this sounds too good to be true, too woo-woo to be real. I get it. I was skeptical too. But there's actually fascinating science behind why these principles work. Quantum physics has shown us that everything in the universe is energy vibrating at different frequencies. Our thoughts and emotions have measurable electromagnetic frequencies. When we consistently think and feel from a place of abundance, gratitude, and possibility, we're literally broadcasting that frequency into the quantum field. Neuroscience research has proven that our brains are constantly rewiring themselves based on our repeated thoughts and experiences. When we practice visualization and positive thinking, we're actually creating new neural pathways that make success and happiness more automatic. The reticular activating system in our brain filters information based on what we've told it is important. When we focus on opportunities, gratitude, and possibilities, our brain starts noticing more of them in our environment. It's like changing the lens through which we see reality. But beyond the science, there's something even more profound at work. When we align our thoughts, emotions, and actions with our deepest desires, we tap into what some call the unified field, that invisible intelligence that orchestrates everything from the movement of planets to the timing of synchronicities in our lives. Here's what I've learned that goes beyond techniques and practices. We are not separate from the creative force of the universe. We are expressions of that creative force. When we remember this truth and live from it, we stop being victims of circumstances and start being conscious participants in the creation of our reality. The law of attraction isn't something that works sometimes for some people. It's always working for everyone. The question is whether we're using it consciously or unconsciously. Every moment, we're attracting experiences that match our dominant thoughts and feelings. Most people are creating by default, worrying about what they don't want, focusing on problems, feeling powerless, and then wondering why life feels hard. But when we become conscious creators, when we align our inner world with our desired outer world, we tap into a power that can transform any circumstance. The universe isn't testing us or punishing us or randomly giving good things to some and not others. It's responding to our vibration with perfect precision. When we change our vibration, our reality changes to match it. If you're listening to this and your life feels like mine did 3 years ago, if you're struggling, if you feel stuck, if you wonder why good things seem to happen to everyone else but you, please hear me when I say this. Your circumstances are not your destiny. Your past does not define your future. Your current reality is simply the result of old patterns of thinking and feeling, and you have the power to change those patterns starting right now. You don't need to figure out how your life will change. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. You just need to be willing to consider that there might be another way, a better way, a way that honors your deepest dreams instead of your deepest fears. Start small. Start with gratitude for what you have right now, even if it's not everything you want. Start with 5 minutes of visualization each morning, feeling into the life you want to create. Start treating yourself like someone you love. Start looking for evidence that the universe is friendly instead of evidence that it's working against you. The same power that grew you from a single cell into the magnificent being you are today is still working in your life. The same intelligence that coordinates sunrise and sunset, that knows when flowers should bloom and birds should migrate, is available to orchestrate the details of your personal transformation. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too old, too young, too anything to create the life you dream of. You are a powerful creator having a temporary experience of limitation, and you can wake up from that dream anytime you choose. Your life is not happening to you. It's happening through you. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every belief you hold is sending a signal into the quantum field of infinite possibilities. That field is responding to your signal by bringing you experiences that match your inner state. This means you have more power than you've ever imagined. It also means you have more responsibility than you might want to accept. But with that responsibility comes freedom. The freedom to consciously create instead of unconsciously react. The question isn't whether the law of attraction works. The question is, are you willing to work with it consciously? Are you willing to take responsibility for your inner world so you can transform your outer world? Are you willing to believe in your own power to create change? Because if you are, if you're ready to stop being a victim of circumstances and start being a conscious creator of your reality, then everything you've ever wanted is not only possible, it's inevitable. The universe is not only listening, it's been waiting for you to remember who you really are and what you're truly capable of. Your transformation starts now. Your new life is calling, and all you have to do is answer. If this story resonated with you, if something inside you stirred with recognition or hope, then the universe is speaking to you through these words. Comment below, "I am ready," if you're willing to step into your power as a conscious creator. And if you believe that your thoughts and feelings are creating your reality, comment, "I trust the process." Hit that like button if this story reminded you of your own infinite potential, and subscribe for more stories of transformation and awakening. Because your journey of conscious creation is just beginning, and I can't wait to celebrate your success story with this community. Remember, you are not here by accident. Your dreams are not random. And your power to create change is not a fantasy. It's your birthright. Trust the process, trust yourself, and trust that the universe is always conspiring in your favor. The life you've been dreaming of is waiting for you to believe it's possible. And now you know it is.